Hello Delago families, my name is Tessa Riley, I'm the Academic Dean at Delago, and I'm going to be talking to you today about using your parent account in Canvas. Before we jump into Canvas, just wanted to highlight some data that we're really proud of. As you can see, our graduation rate has historically been very high, 98 to 100%, as well as our A to G rate. That's the rate of students who have all the requirements to attend a four-year college. So at Delago, we have always been in the 80s, often the high 80% range. Our individual course pass rates, this is the number of kids who pass like a specific course, ranges from 76 to 100%, but the vast majority of our courses have a rate of 90% or better. So in a nutshell, Delago students are passing their courses at really high rates, and this is something we're really proud of, and we feel like this success has a lot to do with our grading practices. So before we talk about looking at grades in Canvas, I thought it would be good to just sort of talk about what grades mean at Delago. So if I were to ask this question, what is the purpose of grades? You would think we would all generally agree, right? Like that we would all kind of give the same answer. But actually, you'll find if you survey parents, teachers, students, the answer to this question can be all over the map. So some people feel like grades is about ranking kids, like who's the smartest, who's not. Some would argue that grades really are just about pleasing the teacher. What does the teacher want? Some would say that grades are about college. It's about showing a college that you're ready. And then others would argue that grades are about showing what you know. What can you do? What do you know? So we looked at a lot of research and a lot of best practices, and we felt strongly that at Delago we should have crystal clear agreement on what the purpose of grades are so that our grading practices could be consistent across our classes. So if I were to read this essential statement to you, at Delago the primary purpose of grades is to communicate a student's level of achievement to all stakeholders. That includes the administration and teachers, but also more importantly to a student and their parents or guardians. So how does that work? When you are a parent and you are looking at your students' grades in Canvas, something that is very important to understand is that summative assessments are what count in your student's grade. Formative assessments or the practice do not. This means that what we call a competency. So this would be like the bigger demonstration of learning. It's tests, projects, presentations. That is what the teacher uses to then determine your scholar's grade at the end of the term. So this is really what you're most importantly looking for in Canvas. Formative assessments, also important, but they aren't counted in the final grade. So this is practice. This is when your student is making mistakes and asking questions and learning. It's the learning process. So it's checks for understanding, it's homework, it's classwork, and how many times a student needs to try or how many mistakes they make along the way is not an indication of what they know and can do. What they know and can do is really shown in those summative assessments. So that's why summative assessments count and practice does not. But formative assessments are still important because it tells you if your student is doing the practice or not. So we'll get to it later, but you want to look at both. It's just important to understand that the summative assessment is the only thing that's counting in the final grade. All right, so getting a little bit more nitty-gritty. When you're looking at grades, one thing you're also going to be looking for is no marks. So a no mark would include anything below a 2.5 on our 4.0 grading scale, so if they've gotten below a C. It also would include anything that's incomplete. So a student maybe did 3 parts of a competency, but they're missing the 4th, or they didn't do the directions exactly right. And it also includes missing, if it wasn't turned in, or maybe a student was absent. And when they have those no marks, they are required to do retakes. So basically they need to practice, they need to study, and they need to try again. And maybe again, and maybe again, until they show competency. Because learning here is the constant. We're going to have them keep trying until they get there. To accommodate this, we need to give them additional time. So every kid can learn, but they all might need a different amount of time. So we have tutorial after school, we have Saturday school, but we also give them those 2 extra terms, including summer. And that's my job. My job is to be monitoring their progress and to be making sure that they're all getting that work done and that you as a parent are aware of what's going on. So this one slide, a very quick 2 minutes on our grading practices, could very easily be stretched into 2 hours. So if you have like 100 questions right now about what are no marks, what is these grading practices she's talking about, why do they do it this way, I strongly encourage you to come to either one of my Zoom presentations on no marks and supporting your students' grades, or I'm sure we're going to be recording it this year because of our virtual learning environment, and I'm sure it's going to be out there for you to watch. So that's something to keep your eyes peeled for. You are also very welcome to email me or call me if you have questions. But let's move on. Let's talk about Canvas now. So the first thing you need to do is create a parent account. And the great news this year is we created it for you. So what they've done is if you gave us an email address when you were registering your scholar, then an account should have already been created for you. If for some reason you either gave us a different email address and there's something else you want to use for Canvas, or if you didn't give us an email address at all, or let's say, I don't know, some glitch in the system, it just didn't happen, and you still need to create an account, you can email myself or our parent liaison, Nora, and we have directions. It's pretty easy to do, pretty straightforward, but we also are here to support you if for some reason you need that. So now you're going to go in and log in. And this can kind of be the first stumbling point. So I'm going to tell you two very important things right now. The first is don't use the app. Pretend it doesn't exist. We all like to just ignore it and not even acknowledge its existence because it's not going to give you the information you're looking for. It really only shows the calendar and it doesn't show grades, and parents get very frustrated with it. So do not download the app. If you downloaded it, delete it. And instead you're going to go to this URL and you're going to bookmark it either on your laptop or on your phone. But use the web browser and use this URL, which is the second sticking point. You must use this exact URL, euhsd.instructure.com/login/canvas. If you go in and you just Google Canvas, it's going to send you to canvas.instructure.com, which is not the right place. And then you're going to try to log in and it's going to tell you you don't have an account, or you're going to create an account and it won't link to your kid. So stay away from just Googling Canvas and make sure that you use this exact URL. All right, so now you have successfully logged in and you are in your account and you're going to be at the dashboard. And it's going to look similar to this. It's going to have all of your scholars' courses. And if you have more than one scholar, all those courses are going to be mixed together, which is a little annoying, but that's the way they do it. So you kind of have to know which course belongs to which kid. So let's say that you want to see their grades and you want to look at biochem. You're going to click on biochem and it's going to take you to the course homepage. I guess in this example, we're looking at an English homepage. So each course homepage is a little bit different, but they all generally contain the same information, and they all have that menu on the left-hand side over here. So I'm going to go over kind of 3 locations that I think will be the most important to you as a parent, but feel free to explore. Like, get in there and just look at whatever you want to look at. All these links will lead to things that are interesting and things you can ask your scholar about. But we're going to talk about grades. We're going to talk about assignments, and we're going to talk about rubrics. So rubrics is a section you might want to go to if you want to understand better what your scholar actually needs to do for competency. So if you were to pick a rubric, what it would do is it's going to give you a breakdown of what it is the student is supposed to be demonstrating. Like, what is the knowledge that we're hoping to see? What are the specific parts of the competency that have to be included? Grades, which is probably the place you're going to spend most of your time, is a choice here on the side. And the great thing is once you get into a grades page, you can actually switch between all the courses quite quickly. So if you were to click on that, you get this drop down of all of their courses, and you can switch back and forth between the courses to see the grades. So once you're here in the grade pages, you're gonna be looking at over here for those letter grades. So right here you can see that this assignment is in all lower caps. That means it's a formative assignment. And actually, if we were live in Canvas right now, when you hover over it, it usually says formative or assignments right below it. Anything that's in all capitals like this that says competency is the thing that counts. That's a summative assessment. It's a competency. And again, if you hover over it in the Canvas system, it's going to say competency below it as well. So these are the things that you're looking for to have passing grades like this. Formative usually is just a check, although sometimes it's a grade. But if what you're seeing is dashes, that means your student's not doing the practice. So if you as a parent go in and you see lots of no marks in your student's grade page and you see that they aren't doing the formative, that's usually like a first warning sign that your student is not doing the homework. And they might say, oh, it doesn't count, but it does, because doing the practice work is what helps you to pass those competencies. So that might be like a first conversation you have with your scholar. Some classes will also use the Learning Mastery Gradebook, and so as you see on this course, they don't use it. So there's no Learning Mastery tab here, but if they do use it, you'll see a Learning Mastery tab. So on the Assignments tab, it's going to be very similar to what I just showed you, but on the Learning Mastery tab, it's going to go deeper into skills. So this is where the teacher is going to show you what is your kid actually learning to do. So this is a math class, so you can see they're working on algebraic reasoning, mathematical modeling, patterns of change, and a competency might include all three of these things. So what they've done on this Learning Mastery tab is kind of broken it down, and you can see like this student definitely gets the patterns of change, but they're still working on mathematical modeling. So on a competency, they might have shown that they get the patterns of change, but they need to practice more mathematical modeling. So as a parent, it just gives you a little bit more information about what your student is perhaps excelling at and maybe where they need more work. So what do the grades actually mean? We've created this little chart for you, and hopefully when you got the link to this video, there was also a downloadable PDF with all of this information that I'm going through, and this should be in there, and I would actually recommend pulling this out and putting it on your refrigerator because it can be very helpful. So you're going to see numbers, and you're going to see letters, and what we've done is we've tried to give you an explanation of what they mean in the middle. So if you see a 4 or an A, they've exceeded the standard. A 3.5 would say that they've demonstrated mastery. A 3 would mean proficient. A 2.5 is competent. And then these are the no marks. So this is where if you see any of these, it means that your students should still be trying and should still be practicing. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but a not yet means they need more practice. So they turned it in, it was complete, but they weren't quite there with their understanding. An incomplete means they turned it in, but they didn't have all the parts, or maybe some of the parts weren't done correctly. And then missing means it's not turned in. So maybe they were absent, or they don't have it done, or it's done, but they haven't turned it in. You're also going to see some fun symbols. So if I were to go back, remember this one back here, and we saw this right here. When we first started using Canvas, it was a little bit funny because these just kind of popped up. And I was like, what do these mean? And parents were like, what do these mean? And then I went to the teachers, and the teachers were like, we don't know. So, but now we do. Don't worry. So we did some research, and what we found was this great chart, which again is included in your packet. So a lot of these will no longer pop up because we've shut them off because they're not helpful information. But the most common ones is you'll see these little dialog boxes. If you were to click on it, the great thing is you can actually see the conversation between your scholar and your student. And oftentimes, your scholar and the teacher. Oftentimes that can clear up some confusion. So if your student is saying, I turned it in, the teacher hasn't graded it, and you drop down that chat box, you might actually see some notes from the teacher saying that they needed to add something or whatnot. A lot of these other ones, like this little page and this little symbol and this little bell, mean that it was turned in and it's being graded by the teacher. So this is something that's been turned in as a document form. This is a URL that they've turned in. I can't remember what the bell means off the top of my head. It might be on your handout. But those mean that the teacher's still grading it. So it's been turned in. So if your scholar's saying, I turned it in, that little symbol will tell you that yes, they did. Okay, so this is a virtual recorded presentation, so I understand that you can't ask questions now, but please do know that myself and our parent liaison, Nora, are available if you have questions. Email would be the quickest way to get a response, so if you shoot me an email and it's a pretty straightforward question, I can usually get it back to you very quickly. But if it's something that you feel like you need more explanation, and want to have a longer conversation about, phone would be the way to go. But otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed our presentation, that you understand a little bit better how to use your Parent Canvas account, and that you are excited to be seeing your scholars learning this year. Thank you.